Okay. I think I'm muted. There we go. And we're back. The last thing I want to show you on this is the first thing that you noticed, which is this rather lovely shadow of this tree. Because you know that there's a tree there. Oh, you can't see it. Oh, I'm so sorry. There we go. This is currently looking okay, but there's something that doesn't make sense, which is there's a tree here, and it's going to be casting a shadow, but the shadow isn't appearing on the building. And so what's going on here is actually pretty simple. The first thing that I did was I found a PNG file with transparency of a tree. It doesn't have to be the exact same tree. It's just a tree. So that has the cutouts that we need in order to make a shadow of that tree. Then all we need to do is drag that guy in, and I'm going to put him down here, just on top of our thing, and we're done. No, not quite. This tree here is currently has got colors, which we don't really care about. So what we could do with is an adjustment layer, which turns it into black and white. And then you're going to say to me, well, that doesn't really help because now it's turned everything underneath it to black and white. And there's a cool little button on an adjustment layer, which looks like a box with a little arrow coming out of it, and an arrow goes out and down. And what that box does is it applies the adjustment only to the layer directly beneath it, which is really, really helpful to be able to control what adjustment layers are on what layers. So here I've made it black and white. I'm also going to make it a little bit more. I'm going to do the same thing, and I can have multiple things that all just, that little arrow there is just saying it's only active on the tree PNG file. I'm also going to adjust the darkness of that. So it's basically just solid black wherever there's any pixels. And I can do that using the levels adjustment with the output levels here. So far, so good. And in fact, then what I'm going to do is turn all these layers off that are underneath my tree. I'm going to turn these guys off too. And then I'm going to take this layer here. I'm going to stamp it up and then turn these off. And now what I have is a layer which is just like a black and white tree. So I've just made myself a black and white tree out of the PNG that I got downloaded. And I'm going to put some of these things back on, which was that one, and there we are. There's the tree. Now, what I can do with this layer is I can change how big it is. Very exciting, I hear you say. I can change its rotation. Very exciting, I hear you say. Except neither of those things is going to quite get us where we want to be. Because what I want to do is basically kind of flatten it down so it's the shadow that's going to be appearing on the building. So what I'm actually going to do is grab this corner, hold down the Control key, and if you do that, you get the ability to change the sort of orientation and the perspective of this layer. Have you found this tool before? It's very, very useful for kind of orienting things correctly into your model, into your Photoshop world. And so looking at this, I mean, it doesn't have to be exact. I'm just looking at this and thinking, okay, where are those shadows going to come? Something like that, maybe. I'm kind of guessing, but it gets us there. And now when I'm done, I press the tick button, and then we're going to do a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do to this layer is I'm going to blur it. I'm going to use Gaussian blur and make sure my preview is on. And let's blur a little more. Something like this, I would say. I want to try and match it up with this layer here, or this shadow over here. Maybe a little bit less. Something like that. There we go. Okay. Right, and then, you've guessed it, it's going to have a mask on it, and I'm going to brush away the bits that I don't really care about, which aren't quite hitting bits that I need it to. And then this guy here, it becomes a multiply layer because that's how shadows work. They make things darker. And then the opacity just comes down a little bit. And before you know it, Bob's your uncle, and we've got a beautiful shadow of a tree on our building. Happy with that? Cool. The good thing, I hope you're getting the understanding here, is this thing doesn't have to take a long time. In fact, we've not been going very long. It's only 10:30, and we've got an image that actually we're starting to think I'd be fairly happy putting this in a portfolio, right? And there's not much geometry there either. I just want to come back and labor this point. How much of this building can you not see? Loads of it. And when you agonize over the modeling, it stops you from getting on with this kind of image making. The other cool thing is you can make this image, and then your render is one layer in here, this layer here. Now, let's say I change something about that render. I re-render it. Doesn't take me long because it's fairly simple geometry. I re-render it. I get a new image. It's exactly the right size. I haven't changed anything about it. I drop it in, and all of my Photoshop work hasn't been lost. I've changed something about the building, but now basically, I've got a new image. And that way of working, when I'm talking about getting out of the digital, getting out of your head when you're modeling stuff, imagine, if you will this actually, let me open this up? Maybe. Imagine, if you will, that I have just spent the last 8 hours agonizing over how this wall works. Does it matter? Not in the slightest. Not at all. Now, in fact, there's one more image that I want to show you, and that's an internal view. And here's the cool thing. I really like this image. I think this is a nice image. But here's the cool thing. These two images totally give you the understanding of how this project is going to work on the site. You've got everything you need to know how it's going to feel. But at no point have I shown you a rendered image of this side of the building. I haven't shown it to you. Partly because I don't think it looks that great, but partly because 2 images is more than enough. Because I've put effort and joy and life and time into them, I'm not going to have to sort of spend ages and ages agonizing over exactly how this, look at this wall, it's terribly modeled. The materials don't line up, the texture mapping's all over the shop. But you don't really care about that, do you? Because you're just like, oh, wow, I'd like to be in here. And look at this cool ceiling, and it kind of swoops round. And yeah, I can't see quite how the wall works with this building. But again, I'm giving people ideas of the building, and I'm wanting to give these images the kind of elevation that they deserve. The process of this is very, very simple, very similar. I want these plants growing from the rafters. And this is exactly the same as what we were doing before. If I come in here, let's try and find some plants. Yeah, here's a plant here. All of these plants are basically just straight photographs of cut out plants that you get from the internet, where you just press Control and drag on the corners to align them. So they're just 2D. They're not modeled. There's no rendering going on here. It's literally just some 2D images kind of like smashed on. And then the other thing that's going on is with each of these is that then you have to adjust the lighting so that they if the dark ones are in shadow, then they need a levels adjustment to kind of just darken them down so they don't look unreal. And then there's some God rays because I put them in everything basically. And then the rest of this is a render. And then there's this question of, okay, but what do you see past the building? And in fact, if I just turn this all off, this is how the render comes out. And it's actually a fairly simple render. But then you're thinking like, well, what am I going to see through these gaps? So I need some images. And the images, luckily, this is why when you go on site visit, you take 1 million images of all things. There's one, there's another one. Now, do you notice these little people here? Is this image taken in the right place? No. Here's the ticket office. So I didn't even take this image in the right place, but I've got an image of two people walking along a path, and that path is basically a straight line. And so it's going to look the same if I just kind of take this little bit of the image and just use that as if it is on the left of the ticket office rather than the right of the ticket office. So here we go. I've got some bushes that I just took from something else. Where's my little men? Yeah, there's my little men. There they are. And do you see? It's basically just a site photo, which I just kind of have skewed into place so that it looks about right. And you see it through this archway. And then you think, okay, well, I need something. Because looking at this image, I don't want to see here this old ticket office on the left-hand side. Well, that's not right. So I need to find some other bit of imagery that is just some bushes. But I think actually, let's look at this. Where did I steal those from? Look, I probably stole them from there. Do you see what we're doing? We're kind of collaging this together. But as long as you don't do anything too silly and you just kind of blend it with a bit of a blendy brush, it looks pretty real, right? Probably fooled you the first time you saw it. Then we've got, I want to be able to see the sky and some trees through here. Is this exactly the right photo? Almost certainly not. It's probably one of these taken from a different angle. It's probably this one, which is looking at completely the wrong place. But a tree is a tree, right? No one's going to lose too much sleep over it. And then we've got a little picture of a bench there that I think I stole from something else. Where did I steal that from? I think it came from here and then I flipped it. There we go. So don't discount your site photos just because they weren't taken in the right place. There's a lot that you can use and collage together, especially with an internal render where really you're just kind of seeing through windows or little glimpses of things. So the photo matching on an internal render, much easier than photo matching on an external one. Hopefully you get that now. The photo matching for an external render is quite picky. You've got to get it right. When you're looking out of a window, you're just like, well, fair game. Everything's up to play for. And that's it, basically. That is what we've ended up with. And there's a little bit of just overall brightness and contrast just to kind of like bring some life to the image at the top, which is just a super simple adjustment there. Any questions on that? Hopefully we're all going to start making beautiful images now. Is this kind of helpful? Are you thinking, oh, I could do that? Anything new? Hopefully there's a couple of new things in there. Cool. How are we doing with both the tasks and then obviously putting this into practice in the design studios? Give me a wave if you're working in the digital in your design studio. Okay, a few people. Give me a wave if you are absolutely not touching anything to do with the computer in your design studio. Interesting, cool. Okay, good. Well, this is good. Well, you guys are going to be so good with a pen that your images are going to be Very, very good. And in fact, actually, one of the things that you can then use is, these are very photorealistic images, right? They're renders where we've taken a lot of time over the textures and the lighting and getting the sun in the right place and all this kind of stuff. You could take this same view and just print it out as is, right there, just screenshot, print it out, and sketch over it. And then you've got a hand sketch of your thing in location. And actually, that would be a perfectly valid way of then taking that same approach. And so the way I've shown you that now isn't a set of rules to follow. It's just, here are some options that are available to you to put in your toolkit. Any other questions? Could be on anything. Yeah.
I had a question about taking a photo.
Yeah.
Uses the background. I had an idea of doing it from like much higher up.
Yeah.
I don't tend to see many renders from higher up. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, the reason is it's really hard. So you've got two really big problems. The first, let me try and find an example. The first problem is that you're not that tall and you can't get there. And actually, this is one of the biggest things that I would advise against doing that, is that most people will experience your architecture from eye level. So what I tend to do is if I'm in any doubt at all, I will set up my render and my view from eye level. And when I'm walking around a place, I take a photo from eye level. I don't kind of crouch down. I don't climb on a ladder. I don't send a drone up into the sky. I'm a human. I walk around. This is how I experience the world from, 5-6 feet above it. This is how I'm going to see things. And actually, those two images that I've shown you, they're not breaking any boundaries of where the photo was taken from. They're fairly natural. It's just like, if I was standing here, this is what I would see. So there's an argument there to actually think, well, humans are going to experience my building, so I will set up my image as humans will see it. The one counterexample is that I worked on a Formula One factory, and the owner of the Formula One factory tends to arrive in a helicopter. And so it was important that the factory looks good from a helicopter. And you're like, okay, but how often does that happen? Not very often. I'm going to try and find this example. The second problem is the horizon. So here we are. Is this going to do color made gates? So this is a render of a project that I worked on. What you'll see is all of this stuff has to be modeled. Everything that you see is a model. Every car, every person, every plant has to be placed. Every path has to be modeled. Every bit of grass, every light, and then the building itself, obviously. And this is a huge amount of work by a big team of people designing stuff. But then you'll also see the higher up you go, the more of the horizon that you see. And so now you haven't just got to worry about modeling all this stuff. You've also got to worry that there's this building in the background that you can now see. And this building now needs to be modeled correctly. And we don't have a photo from this angle of the site because we didn't send a drone up into the sky. So if you're trying to create this image, now you have to do quite a lot of research and find out, well, how tall is that building? I need to build a box and make sure it's kind of the right kind of color. And obviously, these are just boxes and I've just left them being gray. But you've still got to put some effort into what's going on there. There are other examples. Here's an example where you've got to see all the way to the horizon. You see it gets really messy up here. And what's going on is I went to Google Earth and I screenshotted a 3D view with the horizon from kind of roughly this angle. And I've kind of added in the Google Earth. You can kind of see it. I don't know if you can. So this is from Google Earth. to add that in. But everything from here downwards, I now have to have modeled. Whereas with my eye level view, how much did I have to model? Like almost nothing. So the higher up you take your image from, the more work you're giving yourself.
So if you're trying to show your building within the context,
Yeah.
from further away, what's the best time to wait?
Well, walk around the site and pick views which are from eye level, but that show that context from a particular angle. And usually there's a view that's like your hero view. And right from the beginning of the project, you know, this is where my final render is going to be taken from. And actually, this happens in real world as well. So when you submit a planning application, there are specific places where you stand and you take a photo and you say, my building will look like this from this point. So let's look at... I just want Google Street View. Here we go. Blavatnik School of Government. I cycle past this every day on my way to work. So here we are on Walton Street. It's a cool building. Have you seen this building in Jericho? Super cool building. Here's the temptation. This is what people would do a render of the building like. And I would say, no. Walk down the street a little bit. How cool is that? See it poking out here. You see it poking out here. Now you've got a context. Do you see what I mean? Well, it's cool. Actually, someone rendered this, didn't they, for their summer task? They did a really lovely job of like all the glass. It was lovely. And I think you set up the view from here. Did you? Yeah. And it was like either just here. Now, there's so many amazing buildings right next to the Blavatnik. Like this is Freud's, this is OUP, super old Georgian, classic, neoclassical. This is kind of this thing. Like as soon as you just take this and you basically hide the building, this image is like, oh, I'm excited now. I mean, apart from obviously the garbage truck, but I'd be excited about this image. Do you see? And I don't have to go up into the sky in order to get that. I just have to walk around and kind of go, oh, that's an interesting angle. There's an interesting interplay between old and new, or, and it's also about what your project's about. If your project is about how this building is going to relate to this much more classical Oxford Cotswold stone architecture, then views like this are going to be really helpful to you. And you're going to try and make them artistic if you can. Whereas a view like this, I mean, it shows the building, right? But so does a plan or a section. And you've already got plans and sections. So, yeah. Don't want to labor the point, but I always think like, go around a corner and see what it looks like from another angle. Is your site nearby in Oxford? Then go and just walk around, take loads of photos. And it's super cool to then work out like, oh, is this going to poke out above that chimney or below that chimney? Because then, that's what you have the ability to do with your 3D modeling. More questions? Yeah.
Could you go over, you started looking at how you did the wood rendering?
Yes, I did. I think I basically just dragged it on. Then the license went wrong. Let's see if the license is working again. Maquette wood. Roof timber. Should we try it, see what happens? Give it a go. Yeah, it's working. There we go. That's literally all I did. I just dragged the texture on. And here's the thing. Texture mapping at this point, yeah, you can lose some sleep over texture mapping, but at this scale, people see it. At this scale, no one does. So put your effort where it needs to go. If I went and did this again, I would spend a lot longer mapping this wooden panel texture onto the wall, and you'll see that this one's like the wrong way round. Oh, pretty bad. But this one, no one really cares because you're too far away to really see that detail.
Do you have to set up that layer in Rhino, or do you just drag it?
You can drag and drop onto geometry, but it's way easier to make a layer and then assign a material to the layer, because then everything in that layer gets that material and you just do it in one click. And if you change your mind about the material, you only got one click to do. If you change your mind about a material which you've added individually to 300 pieces of geometry, you've got a job on your hands if you change your mind. So layers are really, really helpful to keep things organized. There we go. Looks like it's working. Yeah, I mean, you've got a few little kind of ideas of where the wood is going, but really it's just pixels at that point, so not worth losing sleep over. Okay. Anything else? Or should we go? Enjoy your Wednesday. Enjoy the rain. Okay. I think, is this it for this term? Toby sent me a message saying I think this is the last one, but I have a feeling it's only week 11, isn't it? What week is it? Week 10? Then I'll probably see you next week. Let's figure it out. Toby will send you an email telling you what's happening, and we'll either be here or we won't. Have a good one. Oh, a tutorial session. Oh, great. Come next week. Bring your tasks, bring your design portfolios, bring excellent things to show, and enjoy yourself. Thank you. Cheers.
Do you have any tutorials that you suggest watching on YouTube for Rhino, just to help?
There are lots out there.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you recommend?